How to influence without authority. I don't know if I'm in a position of authority to speak on this matter, but here's a video about it. So I have to be honest about this video. When I was looking for a topic that you, the viewer, was looking for, this came up many times, this wanting to influence without authority. So I thought, okay, I'm not even quite sure what that means. And here's why. Because anytime that I would influence, I always assumed I was starting out from a position of not having authority. And actually, I think that's a really helpful way to think about it. It may make things seem more challenging at first, but in actuality, assume no authority at first, even if you technically might be in a position of authority. Now, before I dive deep into this, if you find yourself liking this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button and the bell so you'll be notified when I put new videos out, which tends to be every Wednesday and every Saturday. So why is it a good idea to assume that you don't have authority first, even if you are technically in a position of authority? Like maybe you're the boss, maybe you're the CEO, or maybe you're an expert in something like, you know, I'm supposed to be an expert on NLP here. But if I assume authority about that, then I'm assuming that I know how you are perceiving me. And that's actually not a good idea. I don't want to make assumptions about that. First, assume that the other person doesn't think of you as being in a position of authority or not, even if you are. And this is going to help you influence so much better. Now, why do we want to do this? Well, we want to do this because we want to get into the heads or the head of the person we're influencing. We want to know, how do they perceive us? And that just comes from asking basic questions. And you don't want those questions to be so overt, like, well, what do you think of me? You know, that right there will kill things. I think the best way to ask these questions are asking the person what they're wanting out of whatever situation it is. So if it's a sales situation, instead of just coming out and saying, here's what you need, and then list all the benefits, you might get some sales, but that's not going to be very influential. That's not going to really pull them in. It's much better if you start off just asking questions. And if you start asking questions first, then you're showing that you're interested in the person. Now, this could also be really good in dating as well. If you want to influence in the realm of dating, again, if you just come right out and being like, well, here's who I am, and I'm such a confident person, and here's why you should date me. And again, you're going to run into the same problem. You will, if you meet enough people, you will eventually, you know, find people who will go along with that, and you will get what you want. Sometimes you'll get the sale, sometimes you'll get the phone numbers. And in the cases of delivering to an audience where you're giving a talk, or maybe you're doing a presentation where you are going to do a sales pitch, once again, the more you can understand where your audience is coming from and the problem they want to solve, that's going to put you in a much better position. And not thinking of it as in terms of authority, it's more about understanding who you're dealing with. Then bring in the authority later. So understand who you're trying to influence first. I think this is something that gets so missed, so overlooked. Everything happens in rapport. If you're not in rapport with the person, you're not going to be able to influence. And I think being in rapport with someone is a far greater influence than being in a position of authority. So connecting with people, being in rapport with people, you will lead them so much easier, so much better than trying to impose authority. In fact, being in a position of authority can actually work against you. Being in a position of authority may intimidate people. Being in a position of authority may make people resent you if you're coming out with this, like, oh, I gotta tell you what to do, and I'm your boss, and here's how it goes. That stuff doesn't work as well. So I think authority is way overrated. What is much better is connection and rapport. So come from a place of that rather than, well, how do I do this without authority? You don't really need authority as much as you think you do. And here's the thing about people who are in authority. How do people actually perceive them? How do people, like maybe in a corporation, perceive those people in authority? You hear people talking behind people's back all the time who are in positions of authority. So yes, while they may do what they're supposed to do because they have to, that doesn't mean that they're really influencing. That's more of like, well, you have to or you're going to lose your job. Now, I think what some people think of this as is, I want to be an authority in my field, and I need people to go to believe that so that I can influence them probably to buy or, it's in marketing somehow. Well, then that's when you really go to what it is that you are good at and talk about that. And make sure you're talking to the right audience. Because if you're talking to the wrong audience, or you're talking to the wrong person who really isn't interested in what it is that you do, it doesn't matter how much you try to influence them. If they do buy something from you, it's more because, okay, maybe you influence them, but they're gonna have buyer's remorse. They're not gonna, whatever they bought from you is not gonna fulfill what it is that they need. It's not gonna solve the problem. Getting to know the person you're working with, connecting with them, building rapport with that person. And then you go into, oh, okay, so this is something that you're interested in. Well, let me tell you about a few things that I've learned in this area. You're not breaking out all the benefits and just throwing it at them. You're actually trying to help them. Maybe you're trying to educate them. If you truly are an authority in this area, or you're an expert in this area, well, you're going to be able to teach them something, edify them. Give them something they may not have thought of before, maybe answer some of their questions, and then they will assume you have authority here. If you're able to give them good answers and you're able to give them something to bounce off of, some sort of feedback in that area, well, then the authority is implied, and it's not like you have to establish authority. So think about, in those terms, I would never come out and just try to I'm the position of authority, therefore, you should just go along with what I'm doing. And even if you are in that position of authority, that is not the way to go about this. Like I said, you could make people resent you. You could possibly intimidate people. All of these things break rapport. I think the idea behind wanting to have authority in order to influence is sort of like it's some sort of easy way. And I don't think that it is. I don't think there is really any easy way to influence. The hardest thing that is happening is, when it comes to influencing others, is that you're competing with so many other influences. Yes, establishing authority, there's something to it. That is one element. But if you're emphasizing it too much and you think that that's what's stopping you from influencing, I would say that's probably not true. It's probably not what's getting in your way. It helps, but it's not everything. It's just one piece of many. And like I said, I think connecting with people and building rapport with people is far greater, far stronger than having authority. And then again, once you have that connection with someone and you're able to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about, then that's where the authority comes from. Now, if you're trying to short circuit the whole thing and you just want to influence just to influence and maybe get people to do things against their will, or do things, go along with you when you're not actually an expert at what you're doing, or you don't really know what you're talking about, it's time to do your homework. Go learn the thing that you need to learn before you try to influence. And I see this a lot. I see people hit me up all the time about this. They want to know language patterns. They want to know just how to influence. And it's like, okay, but what are you really influencing the person to do? Is it something is there a value that you're offering there? Don't just try to influence for the sake of influence. I mean, you can try that, but you're kind of creating a trap for yourself eventually. People aren't stupid. They will know that something's not right here. So if you are an expert in something and you do know something and you think that you don't have the authority out there to influence, think again. And if you do have that authority somehow, I wouldn't assume it. I would go in there and think, okay, how do I connect with people? And then how do I show them for real that, I am a true authority based on what I've done here? And that's really what's going to make you more influential, where in a sense, instead of assuming the authority, you're sort of earning the authority in their minds. And this happens on a very unconscious level with people. They will start to assume it, because if you just sound like you know what you're talking about, hopefully because you do know what you're talking about, it will come across. But they're not going to listen to you unless they connect with you at some level, unless they have that rapport with you. So another way of saying this is assert your authority based on what you actually know, what you're actually good at, what your expertise actually is. And don't try to convince people that you're an authority. Trying to convince people that you're an authority is one way of demonstrating that you're not an authority. It's like, it sounds desperate, it sounds needy, it sounds like you're trying to get them to believe it. And so I would, don't ever do that. Just assert it based on what you can actually do, what you actually know, and go from there. It's so much more powerful to do it that way. Another way that you can be very influential is be ready to walk away from a situation at any time. Now, that can be a little bit difficult because you might actually want something in a particular situation. And if you're clinging to it, people can kind of sense that, they can kind of feel that, and they're not going to likely go along with that. They're not going to be influenced by that. So I'll give you a story. Probably the first time I ever experienced what I would consider like true, authentic leadership. And it wasn't really authority, but it was authority that came across and got people to go along with what I was doing. And it was not intentional, it was by surprise, but I was willing to walk away from something. So years ago, when I was going on my senior trip, I was going with a large portion of my high school class to Cancun. And when we got there in Cancun, Mexico, there were all these things that we could do, all these tours. And I knew one thing that I wanted to do among all the tours is I wanted to go on the jungle trip. There was this tour where you take these little boats, kind of like ski-doos or jet skis, but they're more like little boats, and you basically take them through the jungle. This sounded fascinating to me. I knew this was what I wanted to do, and I knew that if we didn't schedule it early on, they would probably book up and I wouldn't be able to do it. So we had our entire class at the counter trying to figure out what tours we were going to do. And everybody was afraid to book anything because they were afraid that if they booked one thing, then the rest of the class wouldn't do it, and then they would be left on their own to go on this tour without everyone else. Everybody was worried about the popular group not going along with whatever they were doing. And this went on for like an hour. We're standing at the counter, and I went to the class president who he was the one who was kind of responsible for setting the trip up. And I said, hey, we need to book something here. And he had kind of an attitude with me. And he was like, I know. And I was like, okay, so what are we going to do about it? He's like, I don't know. And I was like, you know what? To hell with all of them. I don't need to have all of them with me while I'm driving in my boat. My girlfriend was with me too. I can just be my girlfriend and I'll be happy with that. I don't need all this nonsense. I reached over the counter, had my money ready. And I told the person behind the counter, book me the jungle trip on this day and this time. And I didn't care which day and time. It was just, I wanted to book this trip. Everyone else in the class saw me do that. Suddenly, someone was making a decision, something everyone else was afraid to do. But I was like, I don't care if anyone comes or not. I'm ready to walk away from the whole thing. I just know that I want to go on this jungle tour. So I booked the trip with my girlfriend and I. And then I was kind of turned away from the counter, turned away from all the chaos and the confusion and people back and forth, and was just talking to my girlfriend. And about 5 minutes later, I turned around and I noticed that everybody else was booking something. And I was like, oh, okay, so what is everybody else doing? I found out when everybody saw me do that, somebody finally making a choice, everybody else fell in line. Now, I wasn't trying to assert authority there, but it came across as authority and it influenced everyone else. Why? Because when everybody was trying to do what everybody else was doing, but nobody had a real plan, nobody was willing to make a set decision, the first person to do that, to finally step up and say, okay, I'm doing this, sort of created some sort of authority there. Wow, somebody knows what they want to do. And so all these other people fell in line. So know what you want to do. And if you're talking to a group of people or a person one-on-one, and they're not into it because it's something they don't need, something they don't want, or they don't like you, or they don't believe in you, or whatever, the last thing you want to try to do is try to convince them of that. Be certain about what it is that you do, and then say, okay, you know what? I don't think that what I'm offering here is a good fit for you. I think you've communicated that. So I'm going to be on my way, however, this setting is, this scenario is. And it's amazing how people will actually go, wait a minute, maybe I missed something here. And they may ask you to come back. One last piece that I'll give you here is never underestimate the influencing power of passion. When someone shows passion for something, it grips our attention. It makes us envy that person a lot of times. We want that passion. When we see someone being very passionate about something, it's also what we also usually recognize as flow, where they're not being self-conscious, which is also confident, right? When you're not self-conscious, you're being confident. So when we're passionate about something, we believe in something, and we demonstrate that somehow. Once again, this is going to influence far more than authority. For example, when I was creating this YouTube channel, when I first started out, I was doing a video every single day. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew who I was. I had done lots of NLP training with some of the best teachers. I had a mentor, Steve Andreas, but nobody knew my name. Nobody knew who I was. And I remember putting video after video after video out there. And after a few months, people started commenting, people started emailing me, and were just amazed at my passion about this, that I was able to sustain this. I did this for 8 months. And it was that passion that drew a lot of people to this channel, that drew a lot of people to watch my videos and to subscribe to this channel. Now, eventually, over a period of years and 700 videos, now I am perceived as an authority. But what I think was more powerful than being around for 5 years and in the public and on YouTube and putting these videos out there of me talking about various subjects, I think what was far more powerful and influencing people on this channel is my passion for the subject, far more than being an authority. Never underestimate passion. Passion is so, so powerful. And I think, again, I'll say it again, I think people overestimate what they think the influencing power of authority is. It's not as powerful as what you think it is. It's a great thing to have in your toolkit of influencing. But if you don't have it, there are other things that are far more powerful. Rapport, passion, knowing your topic, knowing your subject. And you can go very, very far without having some sort of title or certain letters behind your name or whatever certifications or diplomas, certificates. Not as important as you think it is. If you like the idea of becoming more influential and being able to influence people, then you really need to check out the Milton Model. The Milton Model is a set of language patterns that was modeled from Milton Erickson by the founders of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, Richard Bandler and John Grinder. There's an entire model of language patterns, and if you want to try some of those out, you'd like to learn a little bit more about the Milton Model and some of these patterns, in the description right here down below, there is a link. Click that link and you'll get a free PDF on some of the language patterns of the Milton Model with some explanations and examples of how to use these patterns to influence others. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, and I can't imagine why, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you'll be notified when I put new videos out. And last but not least, if you can think of a friend or a family member who would really benefit from this video, make sure you share it with them. Take care.